Good evening, friends. It is an utter delight to welcome you to this celebration of Sanctuary, and that is exactly what it is this evening, a true celebration of Sanctuary. And it's great to see so many friends from all over the place in the audience, but I have to say I'm especially delighted that Alf Dubs is here because he's one of my heroes. Whew. The work that universities and colleges are doing to extend the promise of education to the millions of displaced people throughout the world is a cause for hope and for celebration. Here at Somerville, we've had a whirlwind of 2 years since becoming a college of Sanctuary, alongside our sister college, Mansfield. And we updated our historic commitment to support refugees for the 21st century. Our two colleges, Mansfield and Somerville, Helen Mansfield and myself, we worked very closely together. We were, I think, the pioneers of sanctuary colleges in Oxford, and now others are following in our wake. And we very much hope that in the not too distant future, we might even have a university of sanctuary. How good would that be? So the fruits of our labour can be seen in the fact that this year, we have 4 new sanctuary scholars, fully funded, who've joined our college, including 2 students from Eastern Ukraine, who, as we know, come from a region which is hardest hit by the war. These students could not be here without the great groundbreaking initiative or the support of our amazing donors. Some of those scholars are with us tonight, including Sharmak, a brilliant young activist and UN Human Rights Fellow. After tonight's panel, I hope that you will interact with our fantastic students to hear about the research that they are working on, cutting-edge projects on digital education, forced migration and medical communication, amongst others. But now it's time to hear from our guests, who will be discussing the important question of how we, as cities and colleges of sanctuary, can support the refugee community here in Oxford. They'll be identifying tangible actions and solutions that we can all be working on together to ensure that we really do provide a welcoming environment for our refugee and sanctuary scholars. We want them to feel welcome, and we want them to feel safe in our institutions and in our city of Oxford. Enough from me. So I'm going to hand over to my amazing friend, Natasha Kaplinsky, who's going to introduce the panel. I should say that Natasha, she's not a Somervillian, poor girl, but she's from Hertford, and Hertford is probably going to be the next College of Sanctuary. Natasha, over to you.
Jan, thank you very much indeed. I'm absolutely thrilled. Thank you. Absolutely thrilled to be here this evening as the moderator of this discussion. But I have a number of personal reasons why I'm here as well, not least because my father is a political refugee. He is from South Africa and was banned for many years. So I grew up knowing what it was like to live in a refugee family with that layers of complex feelings of feeling, huge gratitude, obviously, for the sanctuary that our family were given, but also the layers of guilt and anger and frustration. As a consequence, I was raised in Kenya, and so my determination to make the world a slightly better place probably came from that. The moment Russia invaded Ukraine, I got together with a group of people down in Sussex where I live, and we managed to get about 100 Ukrainians over from Ukraine and have given them safe sanctuary in East Sussex. And currently we have an amazing family of 4 living with us. So I feel like I've received the enormous benefits of generosity of sanctuary through our family, but also I've been able to give that back a little bit, and it's been an enormous privilege helping them to settle into the country without realising when I started what an enormous job it would be, not just getting them over here, but setting up 4 new lives and what that actually means. And maybe we'll hear a little bit about that at slightly more in a moment's time. And as Jan also alluded, another reason I'm here is because I'm also an ex-student, and it is an absolute delight to be back here. And anybody who is studying here, you're so lucky. And I wish I'd made more of it and gone to more lectures and worked harder, but there you are. And I also wish that I was at Somerville. So there we are. I'm thrilled to be with you this evening. But it is not about my story that we're here to listen to tonight. It's about the amazing people that are sitting to my right on the panel. And I'm going to start by introducing them, not necessarily in order, but we start with Dr. Xand van Tulleken, who is at the end of the table here, who you'll recognise as a star of Operation Ouch, BBC Morning Live, and various Radio 4 programmes and podcasts. Dr. Xand has also worked as a humanitarian doctor in Darfur, so hopefully you'll be able to share a little bit of your experience there. Freshta Karim is sitting to Xand's left, graduate of Somerville who came here to study Master of Public Policy in 2016. After graduation, Freshta became a child rights activist and founded mobile library services, bringing books and hope significantly to the streets of Kabul. Huge admiration to you. Currently working as Afghanistan's head at the Malala Fund, so we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts, Freshta. Eric Marino Supolano is sitting right next to me. He is a New Sanctuary scholar, been here for 3 months, and is a writer, an aspiring PhD student, and fled Venezuela for Buenos Aires partway through his studies. And Eric currently is studying for an MSc in Refugee and Forced Migration Studies. And lastly, but certainly not least, Shamaki Dubois, the New Sanctuary scholar at Somerville, a self-described recovering politician who fled civil war in Somalia aged 8, spent 20 years seeking a safe haven until Canada gave him a home in 2012. So we are going to speak for about 45 minutes, but please have your thoughts ready, because it would be so much better if you get involved in this discussion. So as soon as I've dried up of questions, I'm going to be searching for them from the floor. So if we could start, please, with Eric and Shamak. It's all about you, really, this evening. What does it feel like, Eric, if we ask you to start with, to be a sanctuary scholar? What did it feel like to arrive here in Oxford, to know that this was going to be your haven?
Yes. Well, the first thing I have to think of is it's a privilege, right? So many other people that could be in my position taking advantage of this opportunity. And well, this also comes with sort of responsibility, right? A responsibility of not only performing here, but a personal responsibility in the sense that I'd like to show fellow Latin Americans and Global South people in general that we can think at this level, at the highest level too, and we can produce research and knowledge at the highest level as well.
And when you actually received your scholarship and you knew that you would be coming here, what did that actually feel like for you?
Well, was amazing, of course. It's incredible. It was hard. It is still hard to believe that I'm here, right? That it's possible. Because it's not only getting accepted, but also getting the means to be here, which is, both things are as difficult to get. It's not only getting in, but how do you actually come here? The means are absolutely crucial, and it is unreal that I am here after being at some point in Buenos Aires, crashing on my friend's couch because I couldn't afford, my own room. It's pretty incredible. So I'm very, very happy.
The gratitude is enormous, isn't it? Shamake, Oxford's a fairly intimidating place, and I know this. But you came with a lot of history as well. How did that feel as you arrived?
Thank you. Such a privilege to be on the stage with amazing scholars and amazing leaders, including you. And thanks everyone tonight, taking your Friday evening to be with us. That's generous of you. I really recall vividly because, I was coming end of my 4 years term as a city councillor, and I was always dedicated to my new home and to the people who opened the doors for me and welcomed me. And I thought the best thing I could do is serve the Canadian folks who has welcomed me. But always at the back of my head, someone who has been long activist in Egypt and in Canada, I always wanted to go back to school. But I put the community first, then myself. And that thought was always, and at one point, I thought, okay, I'm in Canada for a few years, now I'm citizen, and I think I deserve my citizenship because I've given a lot, and perhaps I should go back to school. And I looked at certain programs, and the Masters in Public Policy spoke to me, and which really is a very interactive, and it's not thesis based, and because I've been away school for a long time. So I applied, but then I was busy serving my constituents because still I was in office. So I remember I got the acceptance in, I believe, end of March, the school, but with no money. I was like, okay, this is great. Now I couldn't believe getting in Oxford, because of, I missed my, I didn't want to grade 1 till grade 6. So I caught up school late. Yeah. When I was in the refugee camp, I didn't have a chance to continue my education. Then I was like, okay, I will figure it out, because as a refugee, one of the things we really develop is sense of resilience and resourcefulness, that being comfortable with the uncertainty and the unknown. I knew what I didn't know what will happen next month, until July, which is the end of financial declaration. But I was hopeful. Yeah. I knew that, some way, because of that resilience of 20 years of living uncertainty, you develop that hope. So I got accepted another college, which I would not mention, but I didn't get money. I was like, how am I going to do this? Then I received an email from Somerville, and I recall I read it like 5 times. It was unreal, because it took so much burden, because I was navigating the Canadian banking system, because as a city councillor, you're not paid well. Yeah. And you do 24/7 work, which considered part-time, but it's not part-time if you care about your community. So just to conclude it, I remember sleeping that night after I read the email. I woke up 4 a.m., just like all my body was reacting. I opened my laptop, read the email again. Just like, it was real. Yeah. I was like, then I went to bed, then wake up in the morning, literally read again the email. Okay. And I was like, this is real.
So it obviously has meant a huge amount to you.
Yes.
And now you're here, you're making the most of it, and it's fantastic. I want to bring in Dr. Xand just at the moment. We can hear how much these positions mean. And Jan has already said we're at the beginning of a very long journey with Oxford and Somerville and Mansfield leading the way. But can a university like Oxford actually make a real dent? Can it make a difference?
So in terms of the numbers are not the things that matter particularly, it's the individuals. And it's funny being in this room, and I feel unbelievably proud to be a Somervillian, and that is a very unusual feeling for me. I think in general, institutional patriotism, institutional loyalty, particularly in the UK, particularly in England, has a sinister quality. The old school tie, the old college tie, the clubs on Pall Mall, these are devices of exclusion, of keeping people out, the secret codes of the English. But Somerville is the only institution where I constantly tell people I went there because we're not basking in the glorious past. It's constantly being renewed, and I get the association of what's going on now. I wasn't part of this when I was here. So the unbelievable power of setting an example and leading by example, which Somerville can do as an Oxford college, Mansfield clearly can, and then the other colleges, it's not that they're shamed into doing it. I think they're going to see the quality of people coming here. And exactly as Eric says, it's not just can someone from Venezuela produce knowledge in a high quality way. That is the only way to produce knowledge, is to welcome as many people as we possibly can. And so that to me, and Oxford, as you say, that brand, for better or for worse, and lots of people out there flying the Oxford flag going, yeah, I went to Oxford, when, of course they went to Oxford, they went to the right school, their parents went there, they had every opportunity, but still leveraging that for this amount of discussion so that instead of reading in the newspaper, we're being invaded, all the kind of toxic horror of the last few weeks, but the last many, many decades. Instead, you have a story of going, this prestigious, exclusive institution is opening its doors. That value to me that's the only thing I'm willing to shout about. I think it's clear from talking about the fundraising, that is the thing that Somervillians and alumni want to give money to. So I couldn't, but it is literally the advertisements for doing it are sitting on the panel. These are who the Somervillian alumni should look like.
You're absolutely right. About the quality, of course. I'll challenge you slightly about the numbers, though, and maybe bring in Freshta with this answer. With your activist hat on then, Freshta, the figures are shocking, aren't they, with only 6% of displaced people entering into higher education. We've got a goal. By 2030, the UN have said that's got to raise to 15%. That's still a very small amount of displaced people in higher education. Is that number doable? Should we be pushing harder?
Thank you so much. I think it's sad to see that the numbers are very low, and probably it brings a lot of questions to us. That how do we approach it? How do we see it? What are narratives around it? Do we see the people who are displaced as an asset, or in the world that we are currently? There are also other arguments that are creating a lot of fears around people who are leaving or are trying to enter other countries. We are aware of how many people are dying on the way arriving, how many people who are coming and their potential is being wasted. I remember in the previous civil war in my country, a huge part of the population, the educated, who left the country, and many of them left and started working in other countries, but could never contribute back to our country because they were not observed by the institutions, so they could continue working for the country. They were not observed in places that they could use their potential for the good of the country. I think part of what we need to remember is that people who are leaving their country can be assets back to their country. They can contribute back, and places like Oxford can give them that opportunity so that they could have a safe place, but also a place where they can think, they can use the privileges around, but also a place to question a lot of things in a safe place, especially in a polarized world. In other places you cannot question, but in Oxford you have the safety where you can question and think what you can do, because once you leave your country, your journey has not ended. In fact, it's a continuation of it to contribute back to your country.
Thank you. Xand, just to pick up on the numbers then, the trickle that we hope will become a flood. With that goal of 15% in 2030, there's still such untapped potential with those numbers.
Yeah, clearly the numbers are very, very important. I mean that just a single person coming in is so can inspire so. Every I'm trying to think of something that isn't a cliche, but I can't. It's Margaret Mead, isn't it? It's a small group of people. Is the only thing that's ever changed the world. So setting an example seems crucially important. But yes, the numbers of displaced people, and even then, I'm always nervous of the idea. Clearly, the people on this panel are phenomenal in terms of their ability to generate knowledge and to contribute to university. But even if that isn't your strength, to have the access to higher education, yes, clearly, this is something that's massively important. But a big name telling a big story, I think that goes a long way.
Absolutely, I think that's got to be our headline. Eric and Shamake, we were talking about feeling safe once you were here. Once you'd arrived, it's one thing, the honour of having the scholarship. But did you feel safe when you arrived? And do you still feel safe? Eric, do you want to start with that?
Yes, of course. I had to leave Venezuela because it wasn't safe for me and my family to be there anymore because of my mother's political views, because of her ideas. So I see a safe place as a place where I can think freely. Our ideas should be questioned, of course, and opposed if they're dangerous, but a safe space is a place where thinking is possible and it's not dangerous. But I'm not only thinking about tolerance, at least not in the context of an university, but actually a step forward, which is engaging with those ideas and giving all ideas the same value. In a safe space, all ideas are taken seriously, and I'm afraid that in many universities in the global north, it's not always the case that ideas from the global south are taken seriously. So, a safe space, we could say, is a place where all people and all ideas are considered equal. And I'm very happy to say that in my department, which is Department of International Development, that has been the case. I feel very safe speaking from a global south perspective in Oxford.
Good. It's a very sobering answer, that, isn't it? That you feel safe because you're able to think freely. It makes us all think, I'm sure. Shamake, is your answer similar to that? Is there more that we could be doing?
Yeah, I share with the same feeling. I was raised by a single mom, and when Somerville accepted me, I had to read what Somerville College is. And I was like, oh boy, I'm so lucky. Because three things. One is Somerville had a long history of being in sanctuary for refugees. And I believe 1930s. To me, that spoke to me as someone who was refugee advocate, refugee myself, also practitioner. I've done a lot of work in Egypt and in Canada as well. But also, I remember reading it said, included the excluded. It sounds very simple, but to me, it spoke to me. Even before I came, I felt safe, the language on the website and reading about sanctuary. Then, as a single mom raised, when I walk in the dining hall, every hall, there's women all around me, portraits of women. And I was like, my mom would have been proud if she was alive to me walking in these halls of this strong woman that has given this country and the world. And for me, that was safety. I was like, if this college provided safe haven, welcoming, sense of belonging, sense of solidarity, and gathering to make trouble and good in the world, then I'm safe. To me, that what spoke to me. What more spoke to me is I'm here 7 weeks, and the staff, they have been amazing. And just to conclude it, before I came to England and Oxford, I had a little bit trouble about colonialism, monarchy and all that. But at the matriculation, when I dressed up and wore that little bit tie, it felt so good. I couldn't believe that I was enjoying tradition. The whole Latin, speaking Latin, and all my classmates looking good, all the pictures sharing on Facebook. I was like, Sharmarke, are you about to change? But what I want to say is, I'm getting comfortable with formal dinners, dressing up, all that.
Yeah.
And I've been telling my
the
friends...
rest of the country isn't like that, by the way.
Yes. So to be included in such a space and to enjoy tradition, someone who has a background of activist for too long is just, it's changed a bit of my perspectives. But also, to conclude it, one of my classmates, the other day we were having tea. Something he said to me was powerful. He was like, Sharmarke, I thought, and I had certain belief in certain things, which I will not go detailed. He said, your perspective in the class have kind of swayed me the way I was thinking. So for us to be here, we also enriching classrooms and enriching this college, not only Somerville, in the programs that we're in. Absolutely. So the Oxford benefits the experiences and the worldviews that we bring. So also
I'm so pleased you made that point, because it's absolutely right. It's a two-way process, isn't it? Yeah. And it's very important that we recognise that. Freshta, you've kind of been and gone to Somerville twice, haven't you? You've come and gone. And I'm imagining that you can benefit from that perspective of coming back. Do you recognise much of what's being said?
Yes, absolutely. Although I haven't got very comfortable with the formal dinners, I think it's too long and sometimes it can be boring. Yes, I studied in Blavatnik School in the same program as you are in 2016-17. I went back to Afghanistan, and last year after the takeover of Taliban, I came back again to Somerville. And I clearly remember I had this option of going to US or UK, being evacuated by two of these countries. And I think you all are aware the relationship with the US is not very good. And I thought that, oh my God, at this moment I can't go to US. I'm too angry on US. I can't tolerate it. I think I need to work on that emotions with the US. But I was very happy to have the support of Somerville College. I remember Jan and Sarah called me from there, and we had a Zoom call and talking about how to come back to Oxford. And when I came, Jan opened the doors of her house to me, and I remember the first night I came, I was so cold and so exhausted. I had not slept for a really, really long time. And for the next 3 months, I was sleeping in Jan's house. I just couldn't do anything. But now I feel like I've recovered a little bit, and continuing to work back for my country. Libraries, I create libraries, and often I work from the Somerville Library, and it's just the entire idea of library for me has always have been a place to escape, a place to create ideas, not just to escape and fade away, but a place to find some safety, but to think, to ask questions, and to rebuild. And I think in case of Afghanistan, it's very difficult to be able to dream again, but it's good to be in a place that you can allow yourself to do it. Probably, I don't know if one could ever achieve that again or not. Probably it's a journey, but I'm very glad to be here back.
Good. Xand, you roughly touched on the humanitarian doctor experience that you had in Darfur. I'm sure you've got some extraordinary stories that you could share, inspiration, but also trauma. How much has that shaped your thinking as you approach the panel this evening?
So I my medical education was very good in terms of the technical quality of training that we got. And what I wanted to do was work overseas, particularly in crises. And when I graduated, the crisis that was in the headlines in 2003 and 4 was the genocide in Darfur. And that's where I wanted to work. And I went off to work there with Médecins du Monde, who are sort of similar to MSF. And my obsession was the quality of service that we were providing. And that was really everyone's obsession. You know, what slope was the camp on, how many square meters per person, how many liters of water, but also the quality of medicines, the doses. We wanted to get everything right. And we were running our feeding centers and doing all our discharge rate calculations. And we were very precise about all this. And we were entirely co-opted into the Sudanese government's project. So as we were building these hospitals and providing these services, not just us, but Oxfam, Save the Children, ACF, AMI, Samaritan, all the bigger NGOs you've ever heard of were all there. We assembled a camp of 250,000 people called Kalma Camp, which was, by some measurements, at least in the top few, largest displaced people's camps in the world. And you flew in, the first time I flew in, you saw this, it was at that time a city almost exactly the same size as Oxford. And so service delivery was very important. It wasn't run democratically, it was run by 5 unelected Norwegians, but they wanted to do a good job. And so, I mean, this is sort of, it's bizarre, isn't it? But that's how it goes. So, there were a lot of security problems. We argued with the government about the security. So the government put a huge barbed wire fence around the entire camp. And then one by one, they kicked all the NGOs out. And we had assembled for them as a magnet, as they bombed all the villages around. And on Google Earth, you could see the villages disappearing. The Holocaust Museum ran a project to update every day the new missing villages with the satellite images. Everyone was displaced into that camp. We attracted them there, and then we built a concentration camp that we then left them in when we were expelled from the country. And such was the contingency of our funding on that Darfur project, because it was so valuable that every NGO begged to come back, and everyone went back, and we broke that camp into smaller camps, and then we were kicked out again. So this endless cycle of containing of people. So standards are very important. The quality of service is very important. But over and over again, what was clear as someone who was in the business of delivery of goods and services to displaced people was that the quality of services was, of course, essential, but not the only thing. And we were always in danger of being operationalized into some much more sinister project. And so most of my, really all my work, and I'm a total wally on children's television, but I weirdly also do this other stuff at UCL, working and teaching in humanitarian, preparing aid workers to go out. And the thing that I'm so concerned is that they don't treat the populations that they're trying to serve, the people they're trying to serve, as recipients of aid, because there are so many governments around the world who are so good at weaponizing aid. And the thing I'd leave you with 2 examples. One is in Calais, in the jungle. When I was there, the aid community were begging the French government to build better services, to build a safe environment for people to live in, which they did. And the only thing you had to do to go and live in the heated shipping containers that they put up, it was not terrible accommodation. Was you had to give up your opportunity to get on a truck and come to the UK. And so no one moved in. The camps that we pay for in Jordan are means of containing people. They have access to, in many ways, but they are seen as places of help and aid because that's the story we tell, but they are places of containment and unfreedom. And what, I mean, you're all saying it's so much better than me. But the value of being able to think, the value of being able to hope is not something that you can get in Zaatari camp or Dadaab camp or Kalma camp or so many places of containment around the world. So that's my suspicion, is that technical skills are used to contain people, and we can produce great numbers that say no one's dying of diphtheria. I mean, amazingly, they are dying of diphtheria in containment centres in the UK, shockingly. But even if those conditions are improved, that is not the sole project. It's freedom, hope and opportunity.
The value of hope. Thank you. I've got my eye on the time, and I did promise that I would open this discussion to the floor. So may I do that now and potentially pick on Lord Dubbs to start with the questions? Thank you.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much indeed. It's a privilege to listen to you all. I envy you as well, but that's well done, can I say? Look, 3 days ago, I was in Manston. You know Manston? And the contrast between the shocking conditions there and the sense of lack of hope, the sense of despair, and people putting up their hands and saying, I've been here 15 days when it's meant to be 24 hours only. There's such a contrast between that and this. And I'm still trying to get my head around it. I'm sorry, this is not a question, but I'm trying to get my head around the contrast. And what I really want to ask you, I want to be very challenging to you. There are refugees who've got here who will never get to Somerville because, for whatever reason, there are ones who probably don't even aspire to do it. What responsibility do you feel you have to engage with the refugee community who are here, who may have other things going for them, who may be able to get here, but who may not? What's the dialogue that you think you could initiate between yourselves and the others?
That's a brilliant question. It's the responsibility that you now have to become a beacon of hope for others.
Yeah, I think that is an excellent and very thoughtful question. And thank you so much for raising that. Perhaps on this table, we might look like the extraordinary, but there's a lot of ordinary refugees and asylum seekers every day wake up to contribute to their communities. And usually they don't have this stage and highlight. For me, I'm still navigating in Oxford. I already reached out to City of Oxford, and I met His Worship, the Lord Mayor of Oxford, someone who have done a lot in my hometown, in my city. I was proud to create the first Welcome City strategy back in City of Victoria. And in Egypt, all I have done is working with migrant and asylum seekers. So in Oxford, what I can do is, as someone who has a long history as a practitioner, but also personal stories, try to see what is happening and who are working and who's involved in terms of integration or legal aid or all these services that are in Oxford, which I don't know. And then I will find where I fit and mentorship. And what I'm good at is helping also organizations capacity building, so that if they're serving refugees, what should they be sensitive and how would they approach and how do they tailor their services? It's some things that I have done as a psychosocial trained community worker. So I'm still figuring out. I'm here 7 weeks, but you've given me something to reflect on, and plus school is keeping me busy. So I'll try to balance the two. Yes.
Eric?
Yes. Hello. I was going to give a more cynical answer. School keeps me busy. I have zero time for anything right now. But in the long term, what I want to do is conduct research. But what I really want to do, maybe that'll help me pay the bills, but what I really want to do is write fiction. And the reason why I want to write fiction, or one of them, is that when I was in Buenos Aires, and I had I was very disoriented after having left Venezuela without really understanding what happened. I wrote and read fiction, and through fiction, I was, trying to understand or ask myself those questions. What it is to be a migrant. So I'd like to write about my experience and keep asking questions through fiction. But fiction is, in my opinion at least, is something that only can have an impact at an individual level. Only the reader can be influenced, if at all. So I'm gonna do a great effort to maybe engage with Venezuelan migrants like myself or Latin American migrants like myself at an individual level. So I cannot promise like a massive change or a massive engagement with.
We don't want to put you under too much pressure straight away.
Quickly, could I, in the long term, just quickly, to get back to thank you for the... I was just thinking about this month, next month, but if you're asking me after a year what I will do, I'm interested in local governments, because cities is where contact and connection happens. And usually when we see the history of Trump, cities responded differently when the federal government has anti-immigration policies. So what I want to look at, do the cities has a say at the central government and at the federal level, and how does that look? Because at the end of the day, local government and counties are very close to day-to-day transit, housing, sidewalks, who picks up your garbage, how do you create neighborhoods. So my policy is I want to look at local government and how to empower local government so that they can create inclusive and social cohesion. If the environment at central government or federal government changes and becomes very hostile to asylum seekers and refugees.
Thank you for that answer. Shamake, we don't know each other very well, but I actually think you're going to aim higher than local government. I'm thinking more president or prime minister or something like that. I think there's a big future ahead. Next question, please. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Yeah, blue shirt, thank you.
Oh, hi there. I just want to appreciate the panel. I'm not affiliated to Somerville. I'm just a visitor tonight. But I am from Dadaab, and I've lived in Dadaab for 20 years. And I'm very proud to be associated to Oxford because I'm doing another course in St. Cross in Department of Education. But I just wanted to say what Sam said is really speak to my heart. Like encampment and refugees in contracted displacement really makes people lose hope, because I have lived there, I've worked there, and it's just education that has been only a savior for my path and an exit strategy and a route out of it. But my friends whom I grew up with, went with my primary, with secondary education, are still in the camp in Dadaab 30 years after we have been there together. So what can help, I think, will be some, in addition to, I just want to appreciate Somerville is doing a great job, and I just want to be associated by default, maybe coming back at some point later. But mentorship program, coaching program, as Sharmarke has mentioned, will be very helpful, because sometimes we just lose of being here is a great privilege, but also like connecting the dots, because there's a lot of missing pieces in our lives as refugees. But then education could be an escape for some of us, but other beats has to be also be considered as well. And I think mentoring, leadership program will help, definitely.
Thank you very much indeed for that contribution. That's wonderful. Thank you. I hope you don't mind if we just move straight on. This gentleman, thank you. If you could show your hand for the next question, we can get the microphone in place. The lady at the back, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Hugh Williamson. I work for a human rights organisation Human Rights Watch, and it's really lovely to be here this evening. I'm really impressed by the panel and by the panelists. Thank you so much. My questions are more about the Sanctuary project itself. I wonder whether you can say a bit more about other universities in Britain that have such Sanctuary programs. First of all, I'd love to know more. And secondly, whether the Sanctuary universities are involved in lobbying the government for a better refugee policy overall in Britain.
Brilliant question. Ben Hodson is the man to answer your amazing question.
Hi, everyone. I wasn't expecting to do this, but I will happily do so. No, it's fine. And actually, I was going to ask the same question kind of from inside, asking of peers, you know, what actually universities can do aside from making, you know, individual opportunities available, what they can do more to change the landscape. So I've been involved with the University of Sanctuary for, well, longer than it has been University of Sanctuary, in fact, but sort of 10 years or so now. And there are many universities that are doing wonderful things, and colleges, etc., and also schools, lots of educational establishments that are doing wonderful things. And one thing that we're trying to do now is to better galvanise that across the sector. So there's about 25-ish universities which are now officially University of Sanctuary, but there's approximately 80 or 90 institutions that offer some form of scholarship of one type or another. So that's an amazing achievement. It's more than half of the institutions, higher education institutions, that offer such opportunities. And many of those who offer opportunities are working towards Universities of Sanctuary status and to be part of the club or to be part of the sector. So I think now is a really good time to think about how we can use this momentum to better catalyse wider changes. It's a very difficult time, of course, for any one individual institution, any individual to really fight back against what is a very hostile context. I think the way to go forward is to think about how we can come together to demonstrate as individuals and also as institutions, as an entire sector, that we want to see bigger changes occurring. How we go about that was actually going to be my question, and I'll happily pass over to someone else to answer that. But I think actually, just thinking about Oxford, just thinking about 2 years ago, you know, Jan and Helen were hopeful that something could happen. The two colleges became colleges of sanctuary. The university now is going for sanctuary status. I know that was one of the hopes that both colleges had, and just how quickly that's happened is so impressive. And I think it's something that we need to make sure that people know about, and that we can use this momentum now to really push forward.
Thank you very much for that question, that answer. We've only got a few minutes left, so the lady I promised at the back with the next question, we'll see if we can squeeze in one more, and then we're going to have to wrap up, I'm afraid.
Thank you. I'm going to stand up so I can actually see you. My name is Kate Cable. I'm from Big Leaf, and we have 330 young displaced people living in Surrey. Now, among this number are many, many people who've arrived in the UK around 16. And they are being put into education, but they're being told they have to get their GCSE English before they can move to A-levels, before they can move to higher education. The GCSE English for someone who's just starting the English language journey is a big barrier, and it's taking years, by which time they're not able to access the higher education. And what's being offered instead, for example, this week we've had a young girl, Afghan girl, who's desperate to be a doctor, and she's been given a course in hairdressing because they said it's kind of similar. We are kicking people off the train. And I wondered if you have any thoughts of what we can do. I know it will require systematic change, but I would love to see these young people able to access these kind of wonderful opportunities. If you have thoughts, that would be great.
Brilliant question. You're obviously doing a brilliant job yourself, so thank you very much. Who's going to take that question?
Alf Doves is the best person to answer that problem.
Oh, Doves.
Not necessarily. All I would say is that I've had people approach me with I've had people approach me with exactly the problem of being barred and then missing the opportunity, and you're too old, and then you have to do set your sights much lower. All I can say is I've written to the government, I'm trying to raise it, and I'm doing my best. But, you know, raising things with the government, you will know, it's not the easiest thing in the world these days. So I'm sorry, I can't give you a better answer, but thank you for. I was thinking, as you said, I must go back and see if they've replied to my letter, and if not, what are we going to do? There are other ways in which I will try and take it further. That's all I can say.
Very sadly, we're approaching the end of our time together, so I'm just going to go down the. Xand, come on.
I was only going to say. Obviously, this is an area that's close to my heart. I work with lots of children, and the idea that you need GCSE English to function I mean, I don't remember anything I learned in GCSE English, and I'm not sure I was using it for my other subjects at the time. And when there is an irrational quality and an unnecessary barrier, it does feel like although very specific, a very important point for leverage. So it particularly because it's preventing people doing things that we desperately need them to do. Mostly we need people to do what they want to do. Fulfill your ambitions. That's how you create good, happy people. That freedom, health, opportunity, hope, all these things we've been talking about should not be contingent on GCSE English. So if there's anything, I don't know, I mean, I'd love to speak to you after, if there's anything that I can do as someone who at least works in the media on children and those things, I would be very, very happy to do it. But yeah, I'm not saying I can do anything particularly. I mean, I think there may be other people in the room, but yeah.
I think the answer to that is see me after. As we approach the end, just panellists, if there's one thing that we can all do to move this conversation on after this discussion, what would you suggest?
Well, do you want me to go?
Yes.
I would say, I mean, on your chairs, like this is a very rare moment where you can sit in a room and on your chairs there is a leaflet with a barcode that will a QRS code where you can give money to a thing that you know is good. That's almost impossible to do. I mean, I know we've got Human Rights Watch accepted. They do lovely work. But, I mean, it's not easy to find a big organisation that hasn't got some terrible scandal or some difficulty associated. You're literally seeing the humans your money goes to. So not just empty your, you've all showed up taking a Friday night off. That's really good to show up. But encourage other people, spread the word, those things. At least fund this project. It has a vast potential because it can be leveraged into so many other things. And the people that come out of this, I mean, my goodness, you talk about the future. This college has already had prime ministers, female heads of state. We've had female prime ministers. The idea that these people will go on and kind of shine a light around the world. It is a very good place to put your money.
That's a brilliant answer. It's not just about money, though, is it, Freshta?
No, but that's my answer. Someone else can say something else.
Freshta?
Well, I think we have talked about money, so I'll not repeat that. I would say that probably, I think no one wants to become a refugee. And I think we all can do something to end the wars, I think. The countries that are having a war, it's not just those countries and it's not their trouble. I think many other countries have been involved and people of each country are responsible to keep their governments responsible. So they do not contribute to war in other countries. I think people deserve to live in safety. And I think as active citizens, we need to be proactive to ensure that we are not contributing to create war. I feel like across the world, there's more contribution to war rather than to peace. And it always bothers me to see that when a war happens, people and politicians are more excited than when there is talk of peace. And I hope that we all could work more for peace so that people could not become refugees. But I don't think we can stop that. People are becoming refugees for many different reasons. So it's important to keep the doors open. I often think that I didn't think that I'll become a refugee, but now thinking and looking around, I feel like all of us with the kind of governments and situations going on, climate changes, all of us at some point, or our future generations are at risk of becoming refugees. So it's really important that we remain kind and active so that people in the future could do that, could continue this chain of kindness.
Thank you. What a lovely answer.
I would say, just to add to that, we are in a time that things are polarized, and a lot of communities and people might have so much fear of the unknown or something that is very far and distant. So I think relationships are very crucial. So I think you're already here, so I'm not going to preach to the choir. Perhaps if you dine in tables, if you could reach your close ones, loved ones, expand that stories and relationship. And also, if you see your city councillor or your MP doing good things about forced migration, write them a letter, say, I see you, keep doing what you're doing. Because you will remind them that you're not alone, because the majority are silent. The few are the loudest, and sometimes politicians might see that as the reality of the country, the reality of the city, the reality of the community. So if you send that letter and say, you know, I see you doing good work on behalf of me, keep doing that, then it shows that the silence are also sharing those stories and reaching out. So keep building those relationships, keep sharing those stories, and slowly it might change or impact someone.
Keep the pressure up. Thank you very much. Eric.
Yes. Well, first of all, to acknowledge that what Somerville and Mansfield are doing is amazing and absolutely necessary, and to say that this opportunity that Mansfield gave me changed my life would be an understatement. It's something that I'll be grateful for my entire life. However, people here in positions of power and influence in the university have a responsibility, and you should have a conversation about the type of politicians that this university is producing. Because those are the ones making the life for migrants impossible in the UK. So as long as that's the case, whatever you do will always be insufficient.
Wow, what an answer. Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm going to hand over in a moment's time to Helen Mountfield, Principal of Mansfield College, in a moment. But I would just like to add my thanks to all of you for being in this room. It genuinely feels like we haven't even touched the sides of a conversation that could go on and on and on. And there is an amazing energy in this room to make a change. And it just feels like the beginning. So thank you very much indeed for spending your Friday evening with us. To our panellists, to Xand and Freshta, thank you so much for your inspiration and your expertise, for sharing that with us. To Shamaki and Eric, for your huge bravery in coming on this panel, explaining how you feel, inspiring us and also challenging us in the way that you have. We are full of admiration for you, and we are very grateful that you've been with us this evening. Thank you very much. Jan, thank you for convening us. You're an extraordinary woman. You continue to be extraordinary, and we all know that. And now over to Helen, and thank you for everything that you've been doing as well.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm told by the television people here that what I'm doing is an outro. New words I've learnt this evening. But I do want to just join Natasha in thanking everyone on the panel for the thoughts and ideas and stories that they've given us, and to Jan and our friends and colleagues at Somerville, and to Ben and all the University of Sanctuary people, because that's where the idea is. I've been looking at the banner, not the banner, the leaflet, the celebration of Sanctuary. And I have to be honest, I'm not one of life's eternal optimists, and it's quite hard sometimes to feel celebratory in the world that it is as it is at the moment. But what this evening has given me is a real feeling of possibility and hope. And I think I was really struck by the question that you asked, Natasha, well, can we do anything? And I think the answers that the people on the panel have given us, and I hope the work that we're doing as colleges of sanctuary gives, is yes, we can, but we can if we do two things. One is that we tell the stories and we explain the human beings, because it's very hard for people to look away from a human being. You can look away from a statistic. You can look away from an invasion. You can't look away from a human being with a story. And then the other thing that I think we can do is really build a sense of community and the ability for us to do things together. You can feel, well, what can I do? I haven't got any money, or I haven't got much money, or I haven't. But we can all do things together, and it is a question of reciprocal giving. And it's not. The scholarships are really important, and as Jan has said, there's a QR code there. We will be doing another event next year. We'll be splitting this money, so I really hope that you will contribute to the scholarships. But it isn't just about scholarships. It is about the stories and the communities we build as well. We encourage student activism, learning by, with and about refugees and displaced people. That's what it's about. It's not a sort of downward charity. It's about learning and changing who we are. We have here this evening our sanctuary poet, Kate Clancy at Mansfield, who works with people in the community, and Mansfield students who are writing poetry with Kate are also writing and learning from about refugees and people where English isn't their first language, about different art forms. We had one of our lovely maths fellows befriended a mathematician who was a refugee during the pandemic. And from that, they've started seminars of refugee mathematicians, because he didn't want to be a statistic, a person fighting the Home Office. He wanted to be himself with his own skills and expertise and interests and passions. And he now does have asylum, and he's an academic mathematician at another university. And we're all giving to each other in virtuous circles. And as Xand says, it's only small groups of people can change little things, can change other things, and we can become a movement. So I'm really pleased that you're here tonight, and it gives me hope. So thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.